This is Math Expressions Unit 3, Lesson 5, and let's start off by writing your first name and your class number, and then the date that you're working on this page up there on the name line. So if you need to, go ahead and pause the video, and then when you're ready, start it back up. All right, so in this lesson, we're going to be estimating. We're going to start off by looking at what it means to estimate. And if we look over here at this vocabulary box, we see that word estimate. Down below, we'll get into what it means to round, but we're going to start off with estimate right here. And the directions, I love these directions. Solve the problem. I love that. Here's a math problem. Your job, solve the problem. So let's go ahead and read this. Number 1, Tasha read 3 books over the summer. Here's the number of pages in each book. Watership Down, 494 pages. Sounder, 128 pages. The Secret Garden, 368 pages. And then it says, about how many pages did Tasha read? Explain how you made your estimate. So this word about is what we're looking for. About means close to, but not exactly, right? So we estimate all the time. Like somebody may say, hey, what time is it? We'd say, oh, it's like 4 o'clock. Even though it may be just a couple of minutes before or a couple of minutes after. Or, hey, when will dinner will be ready? It'll be ready in about 15 minutes, right? It's a close answer. It's not an exact answer. I do it when we're talking about how much things cost. Well, how much does that cost? Well, it's about $10. You know, we estimate often in our daily language, in our daily conversations. So what they're asking you to do is looking at these pages over here about how, without adding them all up and giving me an exact answer, just looking at them and kind of going, about how many pages do you think those are altogether? About how many? And then it says to explain, what did you do? How did you decide that? How did you decide it's about that many? All right, so you're going to write about how many pages here, and then you'll write your explanation. How did you decide on that answer? So go ahead and pause the video, and then when you're ready to go, start the video back up. Okay, so now we are down here with practicing rounding. And the directions say to round each number to the nearest 100 and use drawings or secret code cards if they help you. So now, see, before we learned how to round, we had to learn more about what place value, because what rounding means is which place is it, which place is it closer to? Is your answer closer to? And I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about. So I'm gonna pause the video for a second here, and then I'll add a little work mat that'll help us out, and then I'll start it back up. Okay, so here you see my little work mat, and it's really important when you are rounding to know what are you rounding to. Which place are you rounding to? The hundreds, the tens, maybe you're rounding to the thousands. So what you should always do is look at the problem, look at the number. So let's look at number 2, for example. And which of those digits is in the hundreds place? Well, it's right there. And what is that digit worth? That's worth 100. And that's what always goes on this left side. And now, because we're thinking hundreds, so what's the next 100 after 100? If we're counting by hundreds, so 100, what would be next? It would be 200, right? So that's our number. That's our between place value. So now we're looking at 28, really. Where would 128 be in between 100 and 200? Well, this little line will help us. This is exactly halfway. And so that's our 150, right? So now we can kind of go, okay, well, where would 128 be? Is it bigger than 150? Is it smaller than 150? Well, it's smaller. It would be somewhere right around here, right? So then we say, well, which of our benchmarks, which of these, the 100 or the 200, is that dot closer to? And of course, you'll go, well, that one. Another way we could think about this is, I'm going to draw a little dot here to help me. If we think of this as kind of like a hill, like that, and this is the 150, the very peak of the hill is our 150, and we were to move that up there and make it like a ball, well, which way which direction would that ball roll? Well, it would roll, we say, down to 100. If I had another number like, I don't know, 180 something, right? It would be up here, and if I were to move it up onto that side of the hill, it would be about there. And we say it would roll up, we round up to 200. So that's a way to think about rounding, right? Where would it be on that hill? Would it round down to the lower of our benchmark numbers, or would it round up to the higher of our benchmark numbers, our place value numbers? All right, so that's what I'm going to ask you to do here is, first off, let's look at number 3 here. Underline, oh wait, well, I didn't do this, did I? I need to finish number 2. So we said that 128, if this is 128, it's going to round to 100, right? So that's what we're doing. It says to the nearest 100. So is it going to be 100, 200, 300, 400, whatever, like that, right? So they're asking you to go and do all of the rest of these. And all the way up through 8 are pretty straightforward. 60 is a little different. 60 is a little different. Where would 100 be? Will it be over here? Is there anything in this place? No, 0. So what's going to be our lower benchmark? 0. And then what's going to be our upper benchmark for that one? 100, right? And then one more thing, both 9 and 10 here, I want to show you, they have a thousands, right? They have a 1,000 over here, or they have 2,000 over here. And so still it doesn't matter. Where's our hundreds? We look at the 100, we look at the 4, and we only think about that. So that 1,000 is going to stay there, and then whatever we round to is going to go there. So the same thing on number 2, on number 10, that 2,000 is going to stay there, and then whatever we round that 615 to is going to go there. Okay? So go ahead and finish that part, and then when you're ready, so pause the video, and then when you're ready, start back up, and we'll look at number 11 together. Okay, so here we go. We're looking at number 11. Now we've talked about this, but it's saying explain your thinking. When you round a number to the nearest 100, how do you know whether to round up or round down? How do you know whether to round up or round down? And I need to tell you one more thing. I'm going to go back up to our mountain, our work mat up here. What if our number was exactly 150? Where would it be on the mountain? It would be on the very peak, right? It would be on the very peak of the mountain. Well, which way could it roll? It could really go either way, right? It could go either way. It's exactly halfway. Which way could it go? Well, in the United States, we say it goes up. We round up. If it's exactly halfway between our two benchmark place value numbers, we say it rounds up, which works for the most part. Other countries say if you have to round within the same problem, you round up the first time, but you round down the second time, which works. But in the United States, we say if it's exactly in the middle, round up. Okay? So that might help with answering number 11. So go ahead and explain, how do you know whether, when you're rounding a number, how do you know whether to round up or to round down? Go ahead and do that. And then, so pause the video, go ahead and answer that, and then we'll go on to the next page. Okay, so let's go ahead and go on to the next page. And even though, of course, there's no name line here, let's put our first name, our class number, and then the date that we're working on this page up there. So pause the video if you need to, and then start it back up when you're ready to go. Okay, so we're going to solve some word problems that require estimating and rounding. And we're going to solve by rounding to the nearest 100 to help us to estimate. So rounding is which is the nearest benchmark, which is the nearest 100 or 10, whatever they're asking us to round to. And then we use those rounding numbers, we use those numbers to estimate an amount that we would have to add some of those together. So let's look at number 12 together. It says, on Saturday, the Stadium Snack Bar sold 286 small drinks, 341 medium drinks, and 277 large drinks. And then the question is, about how many drinks totally were sold, right? So it's not asking us to add all of those up exactly as they are. what we need to do is we need to round those numbers first. So let's take them one at a time. So what I'd like you to do over here, it says to show your work. Go ahead and rewrite those numbers, 286, 341, and 277. So if you need to, pause the video and then go ahead and do that. Start the video back up when you're ready. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to use kind of a squiggly equal sign, which looks kind of like this. And that means it's not exactly, it means it's about. That's what that squiggly equal sign means. So 286 is about, if we were to round to the nearest 100, because it says to round to the nearest 100. So 286 would round to 300. 341 rounds to 300. And 277 rounds also to 300. So you can see how much easier this is for us to add 300 plus 300 plus 300, because really all we're doing is, right, the zeros all stay the same, right, if we were to add these together, and then 369. So about how many drinks? So we would say about 900 drinks. That's our label. All right, so that's what I'm going to ask you to do, this over here, this showing your work for each of these problems, the rest of these problems, 13 and 14. So what I'm going to do is I'll read the problem out loud, pause the video. Well, first off, if you need to pause the video and get all of that down, please do so. And then when you're ready, start it back up. Okay, so let's look at number 13. So I'm going to read the problem to you, then you can pause the video, do all of your work, write your answer, and then start it back up. And we'll work on 14. Okay, so here we go, number 13. Last week, Mrs. Larson drove 191 miles on Monday, 225 miles on Wednesday, and 107 miles on Friday. About how many miles did she drive altogether? So our label is miles, right? So we're dealing with these numbers, 191, 225, 107. Okay, so again, show your work over here, pause the video, show your work, show your answer over here, and then when you're ready, start it back up. Okay, so now we're on number 14. It says, of the 832 people at the hockey game, 292 sat on the visiting team side, and the rest sat on the home team side. About how many people sat on the home team side? Ooh, okay, so this one's a little bit different. We have to do kind of a comparison bar thing here. So our 800, the total is 832. What does that equal? And then we have these other amounts down here, right? We have 292. What does that about equal? I should have made a squiggly line up there. And then what's the difference? About how much is the difference? And again, we're rounding, so your answer will be a rounding. So this will be a rounding number. All right, so hopefully that works. Go ahead and pause the video, get your answer down, and then when you're ready to go, start it back up. Okay, so now we're working down here. Reasonable answers, and we do this all the time in real life. And it says use rounding to decide if the answer is reasonable, and then write your estimate. And then write yes or no for the reasonableness of the answer. So here's what we're going to do. We'll do number 15 together. So we're going to take each of these numbers and we are going to round them to the nearest 100. So 604, that becomes just 600. 180, that becomes 200, right? And we're still going to take away. And 586 becomes 600. Right? So let's look at this. What's 600 take away? Oops, sorry. I should have done that. 600 take away 200 is what? What is that? It's 400. Okay, but what's 586 if we round 586? It's 600. Those are pretty far apart from each other. So Is 586 a reasonable answer to 604 minus 180? No, it's not. So we need to write no there. We wrote our estimate there. We wrote our estimate there So you don't have to rewrite it down below. You could, 400, and then no. So that is what you are supposed to do for 16, 17, and 18. So go ahead and pause the video, and then when you're ready to go, start the video back up and we'll look at the check for understanding. Okay, so now we are down here with check for understanding. It says to explain how to round a number with a 7 in the tens place to the nearest hundred. So think of any number, think of a 3-digit number that has a 7 in the tens place. And how would you round that, knowing what we know about rounding numbers? So that, you can use this space over here to write that out. How would you do that? You could continue down here if you need to. How would you do that? All right. So you can go ahead and stop the video or pause it either way, but that's the end of lesson 5. Good job.